Sorry, um, I, I've been gone for several days, just been busy. My last live stream was actually one in which I had a guest appearance from a friend of mine who showed up. Um, I know he and others are probably like, dude, where are your live streams? But I am here. I would also try to, I will make effort to do one tomorrow. I don't like to say try. There is no try. You do or you do not. Star Wars. Anyway, so I will make an effort to be back here tomorrow as well. Um, so if you haven't caught the title, it says "In Defense of Passport Bros." Um, I have been highly critical of them within the past year, but um, they've been catching some unnecessary flack, often from people whom I don't even see as genuine passport bros, to be quite honest. So we're going to talk on that. We're going to talk on some of these people faking the funk. If I'm faking the funk, um, what the criticisms are, and why the benefits still outweigh any potential criticisms levied at them. All right. And I'm willing to take questions on this, Matt, on this topic as well. However, if you have questions on something else not germane to this topic, um, you can drop me a super chat if you want me to address something else outside of this topic, or if you don't like the super chat format, um, you can cash at me, and that is simply $ just a contrarian. I made it very easy. I changed it from my previous cash app, which is more affiliated with my with my company. So to differentiate my what I do here on YouTube from my company under which is under my LLC, um, people can just you know cash at me at $ just a contrarian if they don't want to do a super chat. I'm willing to take either one. Doesn't matter. So hello to everyone in the chat room. Um, so like I said, the title of this live stream is in defense of passport bros, and yes, I am one, or maybe a former one, depending on how you see it, because you can see the wedding ring, but I wedded to someone overseas. Um, like I said, I've had my criticisms of the past year or so, just because you have a lot of these guys that go overseas tricking off, and I don't care really that they go overseas tricking off. It's the fact that they put it on Front Street for everyone to see, so that that's what everyone thinks of us. And to be honest, the whole going overseas to sow your oats is only part of what makes up the passport bros. It's a huge part, but it makes up only a part of it. What's up, Moonlit Fern? Uh, as you guys can see, um, a man says like, share, and buy a coffee. Like, share, sub, and buy a coffee. And like I said, guys, there's multiple ways you can support me. Like I said, you can just drop a super chat here, especially if you have a question you want me to answer, but it's not about the topic. You can just drop me a super chat. Or if, like I said, if you don't want to drop me a super chat, you can cash at me at $just a contrarian. I don't because this is a vertical live stream. I can't drop my own. Uh, can I? Hold up. Mm, yeah, I can't. I can't. So I can start a poll, apparently, which is cool because I've done that before. But I can't put my Cash App. Moonlit, if you can do me a favor, brother, can you put my Cash App handle in here at dollar sign Just A Contrarian? It's all one word, dollar sign Just A Contrarian, and pin it to the chat room. So in case anyone wants to send me a Cash App, they can. I appreciate it. So anyway, back to the topic. So yeah, I do consider myself a passport bro. It it, it wasn't even intentional. Um, Originally, I mean, for those whom don't know, I have a huge thing for Asian women, East Asian women, particularly East Asian or Southeast Asian. I don't make those distinctions between them other than for like um, descriptive purposes, but I see them generally the same groups, although they distinguish amongst each other. And in any case, I'm just going to say Asians to refer to both East Asians and Southeast Asians. Um, and if I'm referring to Indians or Desi people, I'm just gonna say I'm just gonna say like Indian to refer to anyone from the Desi community, meaning India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, um, all those places. So when I'm referring to Asian, I'm referring to just East Asian. If I'm referring to if the other groups I'll refer to specifically. Thank you, Moonlit. Only I can pin. Oh, my bad. I'll do that. Um, Done. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. So, um, I might have turned down this music. I don't want to get copyrighted. Because if I can hear it clearly, I'm guessing some of you can as well. So I just turned it down one tick. So anyway, uh, so around, so like I said, I've had a fetish on Asian women since at least around 2011 or so. I had a crush on both like Native American women and East Asian women, and I kind of shifted to Asian women, even though they're kind of the same. Well, they're racially they're kind of the same group, but obviously, as far as culturally and ethnically, they're not. But anyway, so that was actually around the time that I coined the term rice bunny. So people probably are familiar with the term rice bunny now, or some of you are. I actually coined that term when I was living in Westover, Maryland at the time, and I was working at a library, and you know, I was talking with my boss and some other clerks at the job. I was like, well, you know how white people have a term for well, black people have a term for white people, for white girls. They call them snow bunnies. I was like, I need to make up a term for Asian girls, and I was just thinking of different stuff, and I was just like, and 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 again, guys, this term, because people will say, well, the term probably existed before then. Even if it did, no one used it in the context in which I used it. So that's why I need to trademark this term while I still can. In any case, I was like, what about rice bunny? And my supervisor and the other clerks, they was like, yeah, that's catchy. That can kind of work. I almost made up a term for Latino women. I didn't. I couldn't. I I lost interest in trying to do one because I was fishing around with cactus bunny or spice bunny or something like that. And it was funny because my supervisor, she was like, what about spice bunny or something like that? She was like, wait, let me stop helping you. This is ridiculous. And she started laughing. So we all started laughing. But she was like, yeah, rice bunny is a good term. and I kept using it like whenever I was at work when I was talking about some Asian girl or something, and I was like, I wonder if this will ever catch on. I was like, but we're in the middle of nowhere. I was like, it's not like we're in New York, or LA, or Miami, somewhere where this can become catchy. But it caught on. Like, I mean, you can literally go to Urban Dictionary and see the term. Now, a lot of the so-called definitions for rice bunny, they got wrong on Urban Dictionary. So I actually went on there and clarified what it's supposed to mean, which is just a pretty Asian girl, a rice bunny. So I am looking into trademarking that, but the process of trademarking a term is actually expensive and a lengthy process. Who knew? So in any case, I'm getting to where trust me, this I'm just cooking. This is leading to a point. Excuse me. Moonlit says, "Can women be passport bros too?" No, just definition, just on definition alone. No, one, they're not guys, and two, we move we move in different ways when we travel. So if that were the case, then women would have preceded us as passport bros because these black women used to to go to the islands, particularly like Jamaica, or to parts of West Africa and get their back blown out by Jeffrey. I mean, they Terry McMillan literally wrote a whole novel about that when um, how Stella got her groove back, which became a hit movie. That was happening a lot. Like it was like people think that was just a novel. No, there was a lot of middle age run through black women who had a modest a modest income traveling to the islands year after year, getting their back blown out by Jamaican men and shit like that. Because usually they were paying them. The funny thing about how Stella got groove back is the so it's based on Terry McMillan's own experience when she went to Jamaica. What she leaves out of the book is what happens in the end. That of course the guy was just using her for her money because once he came here, he decided he was gay and he divorced her and took half her money. So, oh well, because they always tease men for this, but it happens. It happened to her, and it happens to other rich women. Look at how Holly Berry got played herself, but that's a whole different topic. Um. So anyway, fast forward a few years, I'm back in Baltimore. It's around 2014, 2015, and for whatever reason, my sister decides to lecture me on girls, and well, at your age, as I was, I don't know, 37, 38 at the time. And she was like, well, at your age, you don't need to be dating anyone under 26. I don't know where she came up with that magical fucking number anyway. But she was like, you don't need to be dating anyone under 26. The fuck? And most of those women already have children. So you just gonna have to deal with it. And there ain't nothing wrong with dealing with women who have children anyway. She was obviously projecting her own lifestyle onto me, but she was like, there ain't nothing wrong with dating women who have children anyway. You might end up, thinking, finding their children to be special to you or some bullshit like that. But she was like, anyway, you don't really have a choice. I didn't say anything. I'm like, I'm not getting into this stupid ass conversation because it's just false. Like you're basing all of this shit on Baltimore hood rats. There are quite a there are quite a lot of women, even in America, over the age of 26 that don't have children. They just live outside of Baltimore or any other ratchet city you can think of. Philly, Detroit, St. Louis, Atlanta, Houston, whatever. Like any ratchet city you can think of, like they're like not all women after the age of 25 have popped out of popped out some little bastard. I she was that was a losing that was always going to be a losing conversation anyway for her trying to convince me that because I had said since college, since I was like 17, that I would never I would not date women with children, nor would I ever be a fucking stepdaddy. So this is just so this is one of the reasons guys become passport bros, not just so they can sow their oats, but to find better women abroad who are of who are of a wife a wifeable age, like 21 and above, right? But yes, a lot of women here, particularly in low income black and black and Latino communities and white trash communities too. So we're not going to leave them out. Uh, usually at the age when they would be usually marriageable, they've already had kids. I'm sorry, most black guys, especially younger ones who are smarter than us Gen Xers and the baby boomers, they're smarter. They're like, yeah, I'm not playing stepdaddy. I'm not. I'm not building myself up to take care of another nigga's legacy. Fuck that. Like, if you wanted someone to help you raise little Glocktavius and little Twerk Keisha, you should have married before you carried. I'm not taking care of little Glocktavius or Twerk Keisha. Fuck that. Because now they try to say, oh, well, you guys need to be mentors. Man, fuck that shit. I'm not mentoring them little demons. Fuck that. And then, because what's the point in, what's the point? There's this whole consideration of, oh, well, you need to look after the community. The community didn't look after us. Most black men became a success not because of our not because of the black community, but in spite of it. And I've addressed this in a previous live stream. Like, the black community is degenerate. It glorifies it glorifies degeneracy, criminality, promiscuity, drug abuse, lack of ambition. But everybody wants to get money, get the bag, and hyper consumerism. Then wonder why they're always behind and want to blame Jewish people or blame everyone else but themselves. I especially detest the black people who are anti-Semitic. Like, don't get mad at them because they're successful. Their whole culture has survived everywhere they've gone and become successful because their their culture values education and strict discipline, similar to many Asian cultures. Anywho, so I didn't argue. I'm like, I didn't say anything. Um, the next year, I just got my passport. Then the year after that, I went overseas. I mean, the reason originally I was I had intended to see someone whom I was formerly dating in the Philippines. That didn't work out. Shout out to her though. She's doing well, I believe. She lives in Dubai. I'm like about too much of a personal info. Um, but I was like, well, I'm still gonna go overseas. Fuck this. And I ended up meeting the lady who will become my wife and Zoom to the Philippines instead of Zoom to Thailand. Shout out to Richie Mack though. A Zoom to Philippines. Uh, and in case anyone's asking, between where should you go first, Thailand or Philippines? I'm gonna say the Philippines, but it's a judgment call. We can get into that later if someone wants to ask me more specific questions about that. Um, Hold on, let me check my chat filter here. Give me a second, guys. All right, all right. Okay, so I'm not missing anything. So, anywho, like I said, I had my thing for Asian women. You can call it a fetish if you want. I'm not ashamed of that. I think they are the most beautiful race of women. That's my subjective um, preference, though, obviously. Um, and, I just started talking to them around 2012, 2013, online, as well as, in real life when I could. Uh, as a matter of fact, it's funny. When I was running earlier, I just randomly saw someone beautiful, um, Asian woman. She smiled and looked up at me when she saw me running, which is cool because lots of times, I'm just gonna say it, when I'm running past a black woman, they usually don't even acknowledge me. Like they'll look at me, but they're not gonna smile and wave at me or anything like that. Except for the older women. The older women, they'll usually be friendly towards me. The ones who are younger, they just look at me like, "Who's this clown?" or something, I guess. But she was friendly and she was pretty, and I was like, "Yep, that AB 711 gene never misses." If you don't know what the ABC 11 gene is, I'll hold off on that for right now. But um, in any case, so I had this online, this long distance online relationship for several years. Like I said, it petered off by the time I had got my passport and was ready to travel. Um, but luckily, I met Mrs. Contrarian a year later, went there, and it all happened, sort of by accident. Like she just happened to be living in the area where I had already um, found a hotel through the travel app I was using. Um, as you know, with the travel booking apps, you can book your flight, your hotel, and even your ride back and forth from the airport and back, all through the booking app. You got several of them like Trivago and all the other ones. And so I was like, "Hey, can we hang out or whatever?" She was like, "Sure, whatever." So I started flirting with her, macking, doing my thing. And I had a Filipino friend out there who was a friend of my former girlfriend, and he put me on game and was like, "Dude, it'd be cheaper if you just rented a condo instead of um, going to a hotel." I was like, "Wait, what? You can rent condos there?" He's like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "And it's cheaper." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, they're like fully furnished and all that." So the new, so the flirtation with with my wife, who at the time blossomed into her being my girlfriend. So I told her, "Hey, can you help me find a place?" And that happened. She started staying there, and that led to me coming there. So I already had my place set up. It was all good. Philippines was great. I went there um, through a pit stop in Japan, which was cool because again, being a nerd, Japan was always like one of those things on my bucket list of places I wanted to go. And I never thought I'd go there, even though I was in the military. But I never really traveled that much when I was in the military, other than to Europe. I mean, that was an experience in itself, but that's a topic for another day. Um, but yeah, it was so great there, man. Like I said, and it's not just the women, like the guys who only travel just to sow their oats. They are the most superficial of the passport bros. But again, I'm even though I've beat up on them for a long time, I'm not gonna beat up on them here because I'm not gonna blame guys for just doing what guys do, which is sow their oats. Whether they want to trick off or do whatever, I don't care. Like at least they're doing it overseas and they're doing it consensually. I don't care. The girl people here, and so this is where I start defending them. The guy, the people mad at the guys, the passport bros who are tricking off overseas, are only mad for a couple of reasons. And at the bottom of that list is for the moral reasons, which is dubious in itself. But here's the real reasons. One, they one is that they're just envious because they can't do it. Most of the most of these clowns here in America mad at the passport bros going overseas, whether to trick off or just to live abroad and have a more a better life, are mad because they can't go themselves. These these chumps are on child support. They got felonies, which doesn't prevent you from getting a passport. By the way, you can still get one, but that just might mean you can't go to a lot of places. Anyway, these niggas got child support, so they can't even get a passport though. They got felonies, so they can't really travel much to anywhere. Uh, they're saddled in debt and babies. So they got those responsibilities here. They got bills, so they're always perpetually broke, so they can't go anywhere. And there's even some people here who aren't even broke, but they still can't travel just because even though they're technically not broke, they're always in a cycle of paying bills. This happened to my father. He made quite a lot more money than I did, but he didn't go overseas at one point when you know he was welcome to come. He's not anymore, by the way. But when he was welcome to meet my family overseas, but he, I guess, was taking issue with the fact he had to pay some bills and mortgage here. Oh well. um, but yeah, some of these guys who hate on the passport bros, one, that most of them are envious because they can't travel themselves. They don't have passports. They got child support. They got felonies. They got babies. They got bills, so they can't travel. Um, the other ones are are just what we call plantation bros. Like they have no desire to go anywhere else because they never they never known that anything else can be greater than where they've been. They find right here. Oh, we's fine right here, ain't we, massa? Like I said, they're fine being the king of the hood. So those sort of plantation bros aren't going anywhere. They want to be the king of the hood, or they just love, or they might not. And these people may not even be broke. They just plantation bro minded. Like they'll fly all over the U.S. like and brag about, oh, I'm going to Miami. Yeah, I'm going to L.A. Yeah, I'm going to Manhattan. I'm going down to Houston to Houston. Um, I'm going to New Orleans and blah blah blah. Yeah, that's all good and fine, but none of that shit beats hanging out in Berlin or Bucharest or Tokyo or Bangkok or you know Taipei or Shanghai and Medellin and you know and I can just go on so many places, Boracay, um, in Paris. Like, fuck LA, fuck Miami, fuck New York. New York ain't shit compared to Paris or Tokyo. Tokyo's multiple times bigger, and New York copies Paris. So even London is better. So like, and I don't even think much. I don't even think very highly of London, but even London is better. Like none of these cities people be bragging about they fly to um, can amount to being overseas. Period. Uh, then you got the other guys who are mad because they make their money teaching guys how to be pickup artists and stuff like that. So the pickup artists are mad at the passport bro saying, "Oh, you guys are just losers. That's why you have to go overseas." So okay, let's take that argument at face value, which is not, by the way. But let's take that argument at face value that most of you guys are just losers. So that's why you're going overseas so you can get women. Okay, if they are in fact losers and they're going therefore overseas to find happiness with women who whom don't care about their social status here in America, that sounds like a rational thing to do. Like how are you going to clown that? So the guys you you think are of a lower tier towards the women here in America are diversifying their portfolio by going overseas where they can make more of themselves. That's a rational mindset. That's not how is that how are you clowning on that? But these dumb little pickup artists um, and relationship coaches are salty that these guys have found ways to leverage their you know their opportunities without coming to them and taking money out of their pocket. So that's what that's all about. Because obviously it's rational to go where you want it. Go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. So, like I said, if the guys are losers, they're fat, they're old, they're socially awkward. And again, these are all things I've made fun of myself. So just because I'm defending it now doesn't mean that I don't think those guys should work on some self improvement. They definitely should. But in the interim, it is rational for them to therefore go somewhere where they will still find women who like them despite their shortcomings. I'm sorry, not everyone is going to be born to become 6'4", um, be a have a seven figure net worth, um, or have the the anatomy for having a eight pack. Not sorry, not everyone's gonna you know fulfill that, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, in defense of them, like I said, if they can find opportunities overseas, that's a rational thing to do. Now, however, I will say that the brothers still need to work on themselves because you got a lot of brothers to go overseas looking all fat. Like I said, you go overseas and the girls are hoping you look like Austin Holloman, but you go over there and you looking more like um, Fat Albert. I don't want to use a real person because I don't. I was about to use a real person's name, but ins- I'm not gonna insult a real person like that. So I'll just say this. A lot of these a lot of these women overseas, they hoping you look like Austin Holloman, but you look more like Fat Albert. So you need to work on that. You do need to work on that. But in the meantime, you should still go where you're celebrated. That's just rational. So for the pickup artists mad at these men that they found a way to find women that don't mind having sex with them, then I say that's a W. That's a W in my mind. Uh, And then there's the other criticism, well, they just over there paying for sex. All right, so let's address this one. Because this is something I've highly criticized too. I'm against this myself. However, I will say this. This guy's paying for it here, but they're paying more for it and they're getting less quality pussy. And I'm just going to be completely frank. You can say I'm being misogynist or whatever. I don't care. Call me misogynist. One thing you can't call me though is an incel because I am happily married and I've never had a problem banging backs out. You know. Anywho, so the guys who go overseas and just do pay for play, a lot of them, yes, some of them might do it because they're socially awkward and know how to, and maybe don't know how to engage with women. But here's the thing: engaging with pay for play women at least allows them to practice actually talking with women. Also, some of these guys are pay for play because they're not ready for relationships yet. Some of them have just gotten out of relationships here in America and they don't want to jump back into a relationship. So they're they're fine just having a pay for play experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. As long as it's amongst consenting adults, I could care less. Um, my largest criticism of the pay for play experience overseas is that guys were deceiving themselves into thinking these were real relationships, or you had a bunch of YouTubers who are passport bros telling these guys that pay for play experience can translate into long term relationships. And it was like, yeah, even if they could, why would you want to do so? That's just that's just disgusting for so many reasons, which I'm not going to address here because I've addressed them in previous videos and in previous live streams. But if you want to know, go ahead and super chat me, hit me up with that super chat, and I'll address it. Or you can cash at me. Now, um, like I said, so then now some claims made about passport bros is just straight up lies or embellishments where now these women are claiming these guys are just going over there to SA women. That's just a lie. Most of these countries these guys go to meet women have laws that are much more punitory than they are here. So if they were to go to these underdeveloped nations that tend to have more stringent laws and tend to be much more punitive, they would find themselves in a bad way, right? Some of these places are not above castration or unaliving people for what we here might see as minor offenses. So no. So does that happen? Yes, but it is rare because by and large most guys aren't trying to end up locked up abroad, if not worse. And that claim mostly comes from a bunch of salty ass American women here, especially black women. I'm going to get into that. Again, they have no room to talk since before the passport bro movement started. They were known for decades of flying to parts of that, going to the Caribbean and parts of West Africa, getting their back blown out by Jeffrey, and usually paying Jeffrey to do so. Because, or some of these guys were just into them because they want an American woman that they can hopefully live off of. So the girls were going. So basically, the Black American women were going overseas, tricking off in the very way that they accused the men of doing. Sounds a little bit like projection to me. What do you guys think in the chat room? Sounds like projection. Like I said, look at how Stella got her groove back. That novel was endemic of a phenomenon that's been going on in the black travel sector uh, for decades, and it actually got exposed about 3 years ago when a lot of these guys they used to blow these women back out started talking about it. um, and like I said, the Passport Bros started. I'm gonna say about 5 6 years ago. Now, as far as under that label, it's been going on for like actually decades, but it started formally under that term about 4 or 5 years ago, I guess. Um, there was one guy who's recently trademarked the term. He claims he coined the term. I don't know. Um, I, I'm not going to sit there and claim he didn't, just because that would probably be like the same as people who would claim that I didn't invent the term rice bunny. Like, yes, maybe the term existed in some previous usage beforehand, but in its current usage and its popularity is from what I invented back in 2011. And like I said, if people doubt that I've coined the term rice bunny, show me where it existed before 2011. We were all connected on the, like we all had, even though we didn't have like, well, no. I mean, we've had Facebook since 2004. We've had MySpace since 2003. We've had, Black Planet, Magenta, and My Asian Avenue since 98. Uh, College Club, Tagged. I'm not going to name all these ancient social media sites that you may or may have not heard of. But in any case, like I said, let's just go to 2004. Show me where anyone was using the term rice bunny up until up before 2011 when I coined the term. So, you know, so shout out to Aaron Ferris, who I'm sure never watched my content here, but he um he claims he coined the term, so I'm going to let him have it. He did actually, I think, trademark it. Well, if he actually coined it, I don't know, but he did trademark the term. Um, but he and others in the group do acknowledge that the roots of the Passport Bros actually goes back to the black veterans of the World War II era. These guys, um, were stationed overseas, even either in the European theater or in the Pacific theater, and ended up often intermingling and dating and even marrying these women in Europe and in the Pacific Rim, and ended up having babies with them a lot of times. The This is what we consider the roots of the Passport Bros, and I wanted to acknowledge that also because in this recent hit piece on the Passport Bros, well, there was a hit piece by CNN, but there was also another hit piece by I forgot the name of the news entertainment. I know it's partly owned by Bill Maher, but they did this hit piece on the Passport Bros, and a lot of us were laughing because he was like, "Man, more than half of the people they were showing on there is not what we consider Passport Bros. These were just a bunch of sex pats. Like these weren't Passport Bros." And this is where the distinction needs to be made because, like I said, although there are a lot of Passport Bros who are sex pats, they are not synonymous terms. A lot of these sex pets aren't even black. The majority of them are white. And the 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 association with sex pets with the Passport Bros was just hilarious because the Passport Bros are by and large still mostly black folks. But now everyone wants to jump on and use the term fine, but let's not try to whitewash it because I've already seen some white and Asian passport bros trying to whitewash the history of it, saying, "Oh, well, actually, this started way back when the Europeans started colonizing these places and blah blah blah." I'm like, no, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Passport bros started within the black community, so let's make that vividly clear. The passport bro movement started within the black community. It was the term was trademarked by Aaron Ferris, who may have actually coined it as well. Um, and its 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 historical roots dates back to the black men of the World War II era who started dating outside their race as a preference when they went overseas. So a lot of them ended up a lot of them either ended up staying overseas, living abroad after their service ended, or they came back to America with their foreign women. These were, and this is what we consider the origins of the passport bro movement, not with a bunch of white and Asian people who conquered and colonized and stuff like that. That's stretching the term way too far, especially because you're talking about times in which there wasn't even passports. At least not passports as we know them today. There were like, yes, there were sorts of travel identification that people used even as far back as like, you know, um, centuries ago. But in its current form, the passports, I'm talking about the 20th century, um, and we're talking about these guys from the World War II era, these black vets. There was even a Jet Ebony magazine that highlighted the life of a black man who married a Japanese woman, and this was in 1955, I think, saying, do Japanese women make better wives? And that was literally in the Jet Ebony magazine. Checking my chat filter here because I don't see anyone chatting here. Oh, and shout out to someone just sent me a cash app. Appreciate it, brother. I don't want to use your real name if you're still here right now because you know it's not for me to put anyone's business out there like that. Uh, Trey says, "What up? Bringing back, bringing back us is crazy." You're right. I mean, like I said, we're grown men. We can talk about it, right? Like I said, I don't have any problem with guys going overseas, sowing their oats. You know, we're men. That's what we do. As long as it's consenting, who cares, right? My problem, like I said, my only problem with some of the passport bros was they were just bragging about it and putting it on social media. I was like, not everything you guys do need to be put on Front Street. Like, leave some of that stuff to the imagination. Like, if people see you living your living your best life, they see you, cuffing some baddies. You in Medellin, and you with Maricela, and Maricela would be a freaking 9 or 10 here in America, and she's like only a 6 over there. You're winning, right? No, there's no need for you to be, on social media saying, yeah, look at this look at this chick I just bagged last night in Cartagena. And tomorrow I'm going to Medellin and meet up with Lethea. Like, no, you don't have to do all that. Or guys in Pattaya in Thailand scenario, like I just banged out Pat Pat and and so and so and so and so and so and so, and we just had a foursome, and yeah, that goes down. It goes that, guys. If you go nowhere else, zoom to Thailand to go to Pattaya. If you need information on Pattaya, hit up Richie Mack at Zoom to Thailand. He can give you consultation. I usually don't believe in consultations. However, if you never been to Thailand, you need someone to put you on game. So why not him? So he can hit up Richie Mack at Zoom to Thailand. If anyone ever does, just tell him I said hi from my YouTube channel. Maybe he'll give me a shout out one day. But anyway, uh, yeah, it goes down in Pattaya. It goes down in Angeles City in the Philippines. It goes down in a lot of places where there's huge red light districts. There's a nice red light district, and I haven't frequented all these places just to let you know. I'm not freaking off like that. I'm not Diddy. I don't travel with the Diddy oil. Just saying. But yeah, I mean but yes, there's notorious red light districts in Cartagena, Medellin, Santo Domingo, uh, Cristal. I mean, sorry, Cristobal, um, in in Panama, in Pattaya, Thailand, and Bangkok, Thailand, and Phuket, Thailand, and Chiang Mai, uh, over in over over in Burma. But I would not. You can go to Burma right now, but don't go there to don't go there for the looking for the nightlife. That's not where it's at right now. Burma is still amidst still under civil unrest, so it is safe to travel there. My wife just went there this year. I actually encouraged her to go after I was initially told her not to, but then we looked more into it and found out there are actual areas where it's safe to go. But don't go there for the nightlife. So, but in the past, yes, it had a nice nightlife similar to Thailand. But no, if you're not, but outside of Thailand, you can go to Cambodia. They have a nice uh, nightlife. Vietnam has a nice nightlife. Yes, Vietnam, like um, in depending on what you want to call it, Saigon. A lot of the Vietnamese who came here as refugees still call it Saigon, but if you go over there, they refer to it as Ho Chi Minh City. Um, or you can go to Hanoi, which is I think the capital. Goes down there. Goes down in a few places in China, like Shanghai. That's where you'll find probably the most that's probably like the most international city in China is Shanghai, probably more so than Beijing. But Shanghai is more of a it's always had like an international flavor to it. Or outside of mainland China, Hong Kong, nightlife, supreme. Um, Laos too, and I think specifically in was it Vientiane. I know I butchered the name because I know it's in French, but I don't know if they pronounce it in the way it's in French. So Vientiane or whatever, however they want to pronounce it. um, there's some nightlife in Taipei in Taiwan, um, Japan, of course, in Tokyo and Osaka. I heard the nightlife is actually greater in Osaka than in Tokyo, but in Tokyo it's just a bigger it's just a larger metropolis than Osaka, so there's much more to do in Tokyo, particularly in places like Shinjuku and Shibuya and Roppongi. Um, um, I think in other cities too, besides Tokyo and Osaka, I think Fukuoka, but it's not going to be comparable to Tokyo and Osaka, obviously. South Korea, definitely Seoul, and I forgot the name. There's a city in South Korea known just for like having resorts for like sexual exploration. Okay, I don't know how to put it better. um, what else? Oh, and I'm forgetting Europe. Like pretty much all of Western Europe has real light districts and good nightlife. Um, in Germany, places like Berlin, obviously, and Frankfurt. Um, they they eat brothers like chocolates over in the UK. I'll just say that. Places like London, France, forget about it. It's the Netherlands, um, Sweden, pretty much all of Western Europe. If you're like, I know everyone here isn't a brother, but just saying, if you're a black dude, basically Western Europe, it, it is your snow bunny oasis. Like, I'm not even I'm not even joking. Like, if you go to Europe as a black guy, just expect to have fun and take condoms, or don't take condoms. I mean, that's up to you, but you might want to wrap it up just to be safe, because oh, never mind. I ain't gonna even go there, but yeah, you as a black guy in Western Europe, you're gonna have a ball, and in Eastern Europe too. Like, there's a little bit. Eastern Europe is a little bit more racist than Western Europe towards brothers, but the women still love us out there. Places like Poland and Ukraine, Romania, um, Lithuania, Estonia, parts of Russia. I would stick to the I would stick to the side the part of Russia that's on the European front, not the Asian side. Like, basically just I don't know much of Russia, but the only two places I probably would go to, other than having someone having like a actual guide, would probably just be like either Moscow or Petersburg, St. Petersburg. That's it. Um, but they love brothers throughout Europe. I'm just gonna say it. Like, literally, the soon as we arrived in Germany, when I was in the army, the first time we hit a bar, like, we couldn't have been there more than 5 or 10 minutes, and this German guy approached me and was just like, "Hey, can you dance with my girlfriend? She really is into black guys." I was like, "Sure." And like, she was just sitting there smiling and blushing. I was like, "Okay," and she went to the dance floor. We started dancing. I'm like, how far is this going? But yeah, um, had no problems. You have no problems finding a paramour in Europe. Similar in Asia. Now I'll say this: in East Asia, it's more of the white man's playground. Like, in Europe, it's more of the black man's playground. In Asia, it's more of the white man's playground. But even still, they still love brothers, particularly in Japan. You wouldn't think so. They have such a fetish for us in Japan. That's ridiculous. Like, particularly the gaijin hunters. Now, the gaijin hunters will chase down, white men or black men or Latino men, but it seems they often will choose like black men. Oh, what's up, Agatha? Trey says, speaking from experience, huh? Some things I'm speaking on experience. I'll tell you when I have, I make no bones about it. I'll tell you when I'm speaking about experience. I mean, from experience, and when I'm just extrapolating from people whom I know. Like, if like I said, as far as the blowing backs out across different places, no. I've I've had some fun, but not like some of these guys. Some of these guys some of these guys are racking up like football numbers, if you know what I mean. Like, some of these guys got football numbers from the dalliances they've had overseas. But so, no, I'm not speaking all purely from experience, but from my extrapolation of other folks. One says, note, Trey can confirm I've lived in Thailand since 2007. Hey, Agatha, she says, good night, sir. Hello. But where was I? Because I know I'm jumping all over the place, from defending passport bros to describing my experiences to extrapolating to other people's experiences of why they have so much fun, to exploring my origins of becoming a passport bro. So I know I'm jumping all over the place, but if people want to ask me questions to reel me into a specific thing, feel free to do so. And again, shout out to the Cash App. Thank you, brother. Um, but yeah, so where I was saying, so um, Europe is in any passport world is gonna have fun there, but like I said, particularly that is the black man's playground is Europe. Asia is more the white man's playground. Latin America, um, because I haven't, to be honest, I haven't traveled to Latin America. I can't say. Unfortunately, I didn't go with my army unit to Panama that year because I had just started there. And when they left, I mean, I think I had just arrived to the unit when when they went to Panama. Unfortunately, um, but usually when most people are referring to traveling to Latin America, it's mostly Colombia and the DR. Now, I think brothers get a lot play in the DR, which is funny because people always try to say that Dominicans are colorist and racist towards black men, but their women love us. I'm just gonna say it. Their women love us. Now, some of them are just pay. Some of them are just pay for play, so they will be good to anyone for the right price. Same thing in Colombia. A lot of them are pay for play, but a lot of them just genuinely like black men. Like there there is some sort of romantic linking between Latina women and black men. I mean, I got some sort of Latino ancestry somewhere in my roots as well on my father's side. So, um, but yeah, I and the culture. Like a lot of brothers like the culture there. I mean, the women feed you. They're very feminine. Um, they Many of them are Afro Latino, so they're black, but they have the Latina culture. But the majority of them are mestizas. They are of racial, um, multi ethnic backgrounds, mostly like Spanish or other European, uh, in, the indigenous natives, and maybe some black people. Um, and like I said, I've been to the Philippines. Philippines actually has it's both an Asian culture and a Latino culture. For folks that don't know, they were colonized by Spain, which is why they named the Philippines after King Philip. And a lot of people don't know they were colonized longer by Spain than Mexico was. And there was actually a trade route between Spain, the Philippines, and Mexico. That's why there's a lot of crossover between that. Even more so, there were when when conquistadors had came to Mexico, some of the some of the people with the conquistadors were Filipinos. Some of you didn't know that. Yes, so there were some Filipinos amongst the conquistadors that came to Mexico for conquest. On top of that, they were Aztecs brought to the Philippines. Yes, they were Aztecs brought to the Philippines. And like I said, there was a trade route between um, Spain, the Philippines, and Mexico. So that's why if you come to the Philippines, you might think you have landed in somewhere in Latin America until you see the people. And then even when you see the people, they look, you might confuse, you might be confused with indigenous people, which is actually the converse of what Christopher Columbus did. He arrived in the Caribbean and thought he had made it to the East Indies. He basically thought he was in Indonesia. He thought he was in modern day Indonesia when he arrived in the Caribbean. because the indigenous people looked like the people in Southeast Asia. And he died believing that he had found a, a shortcut to the East Indies, to which in his honor they were renamed the West Indies. Um, but yeah, so you go to the Philippines, and with a lot of the Spanish Spanish style architecture, seeing some of these cathedrals, even some of the way they dress. Like the women wear a formal dress called the Filipiniana. I think I'm pronouncing that right. The Filipiniana. it looks like a it looks like a dress. It's a formal dress that looks reminiscent of something that would have been worn, say, like in 17th century Spain, or eight, or maybe like 17th, 18th century Spain. That's what it looks like. It's really pretty when these ladies wear it. It's very pretty, and like I said, many Filipinos are already outstandingly beautiful anyway. So, um, with them putting on those dresses, and usually it's for like something formal, like a graduation or something like that. But it's really cute when they wear them. Um, but where was I? But yeah, like I said, the Philippines kind of gives you the best of both worlds. You can get both East Asian culture and Latino culture mixed in one right there in the Pacific. I think Guam kind of gives has a similar feel for it, although they're not Asian. They're like Pacific Islanders. But then that's been a debate in the Philippines too. If they're Pacific Islanders, Asians, or Latinos. Well, the short answer is they're all three. But calling them Pacific Islanders just seems kind of would be seem kind of wrong headed. Because if that's the case, then you may as well call Japanese people Pacific Islanders too. I guess it says, "What's the reason passport bro travel to those different countries?" Oh, well, you just came here, so. But I've kind of explained that already. Like some of them go there to find women. Most of them go there to find women. Others go there to live a better lifestyle, and some of them go there for a reason I haven't addressed yet, but I'm going to address it now. With Save Yourself Black Men, that became an issue around the time right before the legendary Kevin Samuels died. Look, Kevin, for all the flack Kevin Samuels was catching from people, he was trying to foster black relationships. And this was in that time where he saw that a lot of black men were just kind of done with the black community. They were done with black women, and they were done with dealing with the black community in general. And right around that time grew the Passport Bro movement and the Save Yourself Black Man movement, which I consider myself of both. I have no dealings with the black community whatsoever, besides my family. What's up, Cat? Um, and I traveled abroad because I don't think women here. It, I don't think it's rational for a man here to marry in the United States. I think it is a huge, like, you can marry successfully here, but at this point it's not a calc. I don't think it's a calculated risk. I mean, it's a calculated risk, but I don't think it's a good I don't think it's a worthy risk. Like if you're looking at calculated risk, I just don't think it's worth it. And so, like I said, a lot of men went overseas looking for better women, better quality of life, or just to get away from the communities in which they grew up. So, um, and like I said, a lot of the main criticisms of these guys I've already addressed earlier. One was they're just going overseas to trick off. Okay, fine. But here's the thing, a lot of men are tricking off here too. The difference is they have to pay more for it, and they have to put, and there's more potential legal consequences in tricking off here because if women know they have money, then they can, you know, say anything that these guys have done to get more money out of them. But if these guys trick off overseas, like overseas, all of us are considered rich for better or for worse. I mean, most of us aren't, but compared to compared to their income, they all consider us rich over there. So we're already getting the good treatment. And again, dating in itself is a form of long term tricking. Like dating, being in a relationship and marriage is basically p-pay. That's there's like I said, dating here is can be considered long term tricking because it's like dating is prepaid, a relationship is postpaid, and a marriage is lifetime membership. So, but if they're gonna be, you know, um, ridiculed for tricking off, at least they're getting a better deal. Guys are always gonna assess their options. We we're we're more rational in that way. So okay, so they're tricking off. At least they're getting a better deal for their buck overseas. So there's that claim. The other claim is, well, they're just going over there because they're losers and they can't get women here. Like again, I've addressed this earlier, an hour ago. Let's say they are, then that's smart. If they're going where they're celebrated instead of just where they're tolerated. That's a rational mindset. To, like, why would they not go somewhere where they can have more opportunities? That doesn't make sense. Why they would not? That's only that's only that only doesn't make sense to the pickup artists here in America and the relationship coaches who rather fleece these people for every dime they got by teaching them a bunch of bullshit techniques for getting women or women getting men. The other claim is they going over taking advantage of women sexually, that these women are uneducated and all this sort of stuff. And that's not true. The the rates of education over there amongst these women is equal to here in America, if not more so. And the ones who are educated do tend to speak English quite fluently. These guys aren't meeting these women unless they have some modicum of English skills in the first place. It would be very hard to just be continuously chatting with someone through Google Translate. It can happen, but usually you're going to need a translator, or you're going to need to learn how to, or one of the other persons going to have to learn how to speak the other person's language. So that's the other claim is they're taking advantage of these women who are just poor, uneducated, and illiterate. That's no. Um, and then the other thing is these women are better looking. Like I said, I'm just gonna say it. I'm not gonna tiptoe around the fact that most of these women look better. The average woman in the average woman in Colombia would be a 9 or a 10 here, and she's only a 6 over there. Same thing in the DR in the Dominican Republic. A girl just considered like a 6 in the Dominican Republic would be like a 8, 9 here, maybe even a 10. Like they look better. They're more fit. They're more feminine. They're more friendly. They're raised. They come from cultures where they know where they're taught how to treat men. Women here grow up in single mother households where they're not taught how to treat their man. All men here are expected to know how to treat women, but it's not. But conversely, isn't true that women aren't taught how to treat their men. And this is one of the reasons why the women love us over there, because since we're always taught here in America how to treat women, they find us to be more they find us to be more caring partners than their local men. Often they find us to be more caring. I mean, and you don't have to take it from me. The women were saying it themselves. When there was this backlash against foreign women, with all these American women saying, "Oh, these women are just poor and uneducated and illiterate, and they can't do any better, so they take these losers from America." And these women were like clapping back at these black women. They was like, first of all, we're not all poor and uneducated. Most of us speak English. Many of us are just as educated as you are. On top of that, it's like we're not coming after your men. Your men came after us, and guess what? We like them too. It's like if you ladies were so desirable, then you could keep your own men. It's like, why are your men traveling 8,000 to 9,000 miles to come see us? You don't see our men traveling 8,000 to 9,000 miles to meet you. So, and again, like I said, the passport bro origins, like I said, there it's proximal origins stem to about 5 years ago with Aaron Ferris, when he trademarked um, when he allegedly coined the term. He has trademarked it now. He and some other uh, and a few other guys kind of came up with this in within the Black Manosphere space. Um, that's its proximal origins. Its distal origins stems all the way back to World War II, when you had black service members who ended up with women in Europe and in the Pacific Rim, and oftentimes, you know, they just they started dating these women while they were stationed overseas, and many of them, after their service ended, went back to these places for these women, and maybe they either stayed abroad or they brought these women back to the United States. So that's the distal origins of Passport Bro, and the proximal origins, like I said, was about 5 years ago within the Black Manosphere space, when people like Aaron Ferris and some others coined the term and referred specifically to guys who were distancing distancing themselves from the black community, and black women looking for love overseas. Some of them even still dated black women, but they preferred black women in Brazil and in Africa and in the Caribbean, or in Latin America. Because for people saying, "Oh, they just don't like black women," a lot of I'm my preference isn't for black women, but a lot of these guys still have a preference for black women, but they prefer the ones overseas because they're more feminine. they're more, they're more fit, because most black women here are fat, and that's not even an insult. Like literally, like over half of black women are overweight, and of all those women who are overweight, most of them are also obese. Unfortunately, so that's not even a that's not even a stereotype at this point. It's just a fact. Unfortunately, like in Brazil, um, there was actually a bunch of American women there, and it was funny because this they were at this they were at this bar or nightclub or lounge or whatever, and the local women, the Brazilian women, were like, "Who are all these big girls coming in here?" And the guys point out, these are American women, and the Brazilian women are like, "Oh wow, no wonder you guys are coming here for us instead." Like Brazilian women pride themselves on being fit and pretty. Like there's a large gym culture in Brazil. Um, and like I said, Brazil has there is a larger black population in Brazil than there is in the United States. People don't know that Brazil is the size of the continental United States, geographically speaking, and they have a population in Brazil of black people that is larger than in America, and I mean in the United States. Ag says, I feel betrayed by my black brothers. Are those passport bros Gen X or baby boomers? What is going to happen to us Gen Z if all the black brothers leave? Well, eh, it's across all the generations who can travel. There's Gen X people there, of course. There's millennials. There's Gen Z. There's a few boomers. Um, there's some silent generation over there because some of them have been living over there for the past 50 or more years and they've never left. Um, uh, look, the thing is, you're saying you feel betrayed by them. I get it, but you ladies don't have ownership over us. We, um, if black women wanted propriety over black men, they should have shown it by treating us better. You can't, you can't, you can't break your toys and be mad when you no longer have them. So for 50 years, like we've had Sally Jesse Raphael and Phil Donahue and Oprah Winfrey talking all this trash about black men. We're all criminals. I remember the biggest thing back in like the late 80s and early 90s. They kept trying to say that black men were were an endangered species. I don't know if any of you heard this, but they literally used to say that black men were an endangered species back in like the late 80s and early 90s because of the you know because of the high rate of crime back then. Of violent crime was at its highest in the early 90s. So they started saying black men were an endangered species. Then women were the boomer women at the time, the baby boomer women, were all saying, "Oh well, um, there's not there's no good black men around. They either in jail, gay, or married," which is just a lie. First of all, if they're married, that's because they are good men. Duh. They just didn't want you. And then on top of that, a lot of the guys who were around who did want those women got ridiculed for being socially awkward, for being nerds. Um, Told they were corny, which is like what on the East Coast, that's like one of the worst things, being called corny. Like if you lived in the Northeast, somewhere like you lived in somewhere like Baltimore, Philly, New Jersey, New York, probably DC. I don't know, Boston. Like being called corny, it's like the worst thing. um, but yeah, all generations of men. The thing is, it's more pronounced amongst Gen Z because they don't they don't have the same they haven't been brainwashed like the older generation. The older generation was taught that it's some that if to date out was was like was emblematic of some sort of problem with them, that they're weak because they can't handle a black woman, or this or they must be corny or something of the or something whatever. They just use shaming tactics. But the thing is, the shaming tactics don't work on Gen Z men. Gen Z men are dating out at a much higher rate than millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers. um so but the majority of people overseas are not Gen Z, because a lot of Gen Z are still teenagers. So it's not Gen Z. The majority over there are Gen X and millennials. From my experience, most of the millennials are in their 30s to early 40s. Most Gen X are in their 50s to 40s. But there's also some boomers over there in their 60s and 70s. Uh, there might be some silent generation guys, some guys who've been living over there for like 50, 60 years who just never came back to the States. I I I I plan on being like that. And there's a few Gen Z who are in their early 20s. People like Austin Holloman, shout out to him. I know I had a lot of shit I talked about him in years past, but I'm done with that. I'm not going to bad talk the brother. I'm past the point where I'm going to start. I'm past the point now where I'm going to make talk about brothers anymore in my live stream. I don't think it's worth it. um, Alex says, do Gen Z participate in Passport Bro? Again, yeah, some of them do, but you gotta understand, Gen Z is from 1997 to 2012. Some of them are still teenagers. So, I mean, you, like I said, some Gen Z are still 13 years old. So, obviously not. um, there's a few over there, though, that are in their 20s, but the majority of people in their 30s and 40s because they have the financial wherewithal to travel. So you're gonna typically find the brothers who are ready to, who have who are either ready to settle down or they've gotten out of relationships here in America and now they're moving on with their lives overseas. Those are the majority of guys, and I said those are mostly millennials and Gen X. Agnes says I cannot see myself ever dating out of my race. I also love my chocolate man. That's what's up. It's a preference, right? Like there's no right or wrong when it comes to like personal preferences as far as whom you want to date. Like I said, my preference is Asian women, which is why I chose a Asian wife because I think they are the most attractive women on the face of the planet for multiple reasons. Um, but as far like people should only do what they're comfortable with. Like if someone's not comfortable dating outside their race, they shouldn't. If someone, conversely, the funny thing is, no one. The funny thing is, no one's really challenged when they say they prefer people of their own race. People think, oh well, yeah, of course, that's natural. But if someone answers in the converse and the opposite, and say I only prefer women outside of my race, then they're looked upon as if they're deviant. And it's just, but the preference for outside of your race is just as quote unquote natural as it is for inside your race. Like Russell says, did you meet your wife online? Oh, first of all, what's up, Russell? And yes, I did. We met through OK Cupid. Back when OK Cupid was a good site. I haven't like, I've been back on a site back in like 2018. Um, Not really to flirt with other women. I was actually trying to find my original account, where I met my wife, but I had already taken it down, and I couldn't resurrect what I wanted to find from there. I wanted to like screenshot all the old stuff for posterity's sake. But anyway, um, back in 2018, I would still say it was a decent place to go to. But since I referred it to my friends and others, I've heard that the site is kind of trash now. But back when I started using it in 2016, it was like the best like dating site that you didn't have to pay for. Um, you like not could you only meet not only did it allow you to meet people of your preferred age, gender, and within your locality, but it got you could pick religious preference, racial preference, um, dating style, and it had like a litany of questions. And the more questions you answered voluntarily, by the way, the more it kind of pointed like the type of women you could find. And then the funny thing is, if you decided to date, if you decided to turn off the distance on OkCupid, then you could find women internationally, and that's what I did. And that's how we ended up meeting. So shout out to the makers of OkCupid. Like it worked. And after my wife and I got together, her friends were actually clamoring to go to OkCupid too. But again, I couldn't recommend it today because I think it's fallen off. Matter of fact, I would say as of 2025, I would say don't do the dating sites at all. You'll I'm not saying not to date online. I'm just saying don't use those dating apps. All of those dating apps have become trash now for the most part. If you're gonna find someone online, I would say do it through like a social media app like Instagram, Facebook, um, but vet the people first. Everyone says that you guys live in the same state. No, no, no. We like I said, no, we I went overseas to meet her. That's what I'm saying. This like I said, that's why I'm talking about the whole passport bro thing. I literally went about 8,500 miles away from Maryland to meet my wife in the Philippines. So, and have not regretted it since. The only thing I do regret is not being there right now. And plus, when I am over there, I'm gonna be able to make better content for the channel too when I'm there, because I'm pretty sure you guys would like to see me just walking around um, the my local community over there. I do have a place there, um, and hanging out with the wifey, doing stuff. That'll make much more exciting content, I'm sure. And I'll probably be doing that more than like just making videos instead of live streaming. Probably a combination of both. Agnes says, "Wasn't you afraid to date online? I don't feel it's safe nowadays." No, because I grew up in like I grew up in a culture of dating online. Like we've been doing it since the '90s. Um, you know, back in like all the way back to like like 96, 97. Uh, yeah, I would say since what like 97, 98. Like there was the Yahoo chat groups. There was the AOL chat groups before they became infested with bots. Like people used to meet in the AOL chat rooms, the Yahoo chat rooms. The difference, but it was worse then because you couldn't see what the people looked like. You would have to take it off outside of the chat room and then have someone send you a picture, and then the picture would take a long ass time to upload. You sitting there just waiting for a picture to upload. Up, there's probably pictures now. I bet you there's people still waiting when they when they uploads from like 30 years ago from AOL. Right now, they about 90% ready to get an upload of their Tyra Banks picture from 1996. Kat says I agree with Agatha. Dating online, there are so many degenerates. That's why. Why? Well, no. So yeah. Let me um, hit on that. That's totally true. Yes, there's a lot of catfishing that goes online. The funny thing is, the first time I met someone online, I got cat. Well, I can't say I got catfish because I never saw what she looked like in the first place. So I didn't get catfish. It's just that she was really ugly. I, 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 there's no nicer way to put it. I'm sorry. She was nice, but yuck. So the first time I ever met someone online, this is I think 97, 98. This and I was still living in the DC area at the time, but the person I met was in East Baltimore. Luckily, this wasn't too far from where my cousin lived because I came over our house. It was her and her friend. She was ugly. She was fat, and she and her friend were like sweaty. And so I made some small talk for a few minutes, and I was like, "Hey, you mind if I use your phone for a second?" She was like, "Sure." And so I called, and I was like, "Yo, cuz, I'm over this chick house. that I met online. I was like, yo, she's ugh, son. Yo, I said, can you come get me? He's like, yeah, I got you. No problem. Where you at? I told him. He's like, oh yeah, you up the way. I was like, yeah, man. I was like, yo, hurry up. He's like, all right, I got you. So got off the phone and I was like, hey, I'm sorry I had to leave kind of abruptly, but I was like, actually, I have a family situation to deal with. I was like, my cousin's on his way, and she was like, oh, sure, that's no problem or whatever. And I dipped. I dip set, and I bounced. I did not go back. Now, I was nice though. I did message her later that day and thanked her for allowing me to come over. And then I didn't talk to her anymore after that. Yeah, the first time I met someone online, ugh, wasn't pretty. No siree. But yeah, things online can get scary. I mean, uh, and it's trust me, it can be worrisome for guys just like it is for women um because of the LGBTQ. I'm just gonna put it out there. I don't care if I offend someone or not. There's a lot of there's these little he she's out there. He she? Let me stop. But there's these there's some Decepticons out there that will try to trick catfish these men into thinking they're like actual women and they're Decepticons, the Transformers in disguise. So guys gotta watch out for that. Thinking you meet Michelle and it's really Mitchell. I was just saying. Mess jiggle this chat filter. But yeah, but yeah, but ladies, I'm definitely cognizant of the travails of meeting online. Like I said, as far as I'm concerned, the dating apps are dead, and they the metrics are just the metrics weren't sustainable because all the all the ladies wanted us. Most of the ladies wanted a small subset of the guys on those um, apps. Here's the thing: most of the guys who get ass, I'm just gonna put it bluntly, most of the guys who can get ass regularly aren't on those apps because they don't need them. And then the ones who are on those apps, just because they realized through the app they can, you know, extend their extend their back breaking. They are getting the majority of the women, and then the ones who will date the guys who are more average tend to be, you know, old, ugly, have multiple children. So, but yeah, like I said, the dating apps died like in 2025. They're not worth. They're still up, and you can probably still find someone through the dating apps, but the juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore. It's really not. But if somebody want to find some, some subpar booty, the dating apps are still there. There's still Bumble, Tinder, Okay Cupid, which is where I found my wife, but that was 8 years ago when it was still a it was still more of a stellar more of a stellar place to be. They used to say Okay Cupid was the smart person's Tinder. My issue with Okay Cupid back then was like every guy was posing with like a tiger at the time. Like I was like, okay, everyone now hikes, right? I'm like, y'all full of shit. Y'all don't hike. Everyone on there was hiking. every guy had like a picture of him next to a tiger that apparently he must have taken when he was in like Thailand or Bali or whatever. And I've been both of these places, by the way. But yeah, but I never posed with the tigers or with the monkey because what people don't know is those pictures when they're posing with the tigers and lions, they're heavily sedated with drugs, and I didn't want to go to animal um, any of those animal sanctuaries where they mistreat the animals. And I think if you heavily sedate these animals just so these people can take a selfie with it, that's I find that kind of revolting. Like heavily drugging these animals so that people can act like they're tough, taking a picture next to a completely zonked out tiger. But no, you can find people online. Here's the thing, ladies, to address Agatha and Kat. The majority of people nowadays are finding romance online as opposed to in real time. There's a couple of reasons. One is easier. Um, Guys find women more approachable online than in real life. Um, if anything, because of the Me Too movement, a lot of women were frankly telling guys that they were creeps to try to talk to them in real life. I'm like, wait, what? That is the most absurd thing I've ever heard. And then they would back it up and say, well, they don't mind a guy approaching them in real life if they're attractive. So the guy already has to know that women find him attractive before he approaches them. Like, what kind of bullshit is that? And I saw some, and what made it even worse, I saw some simps actually like supporting women with that. People like Trevor Noah, who used to be on the Daily Show. That's why I couldn't stand that guy. I liked him at first when he first took over the show from Jon Stewart. Then I found out how much of a little feminist simp chimp he was, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't deal with it. And then another simp chimp thing Trevor Noah did. He used to always say, you know, I listen to black women and blah blah blah. But you never date them. So why are you always talking about I defend black women? I listen to what they have to tell me, but you don't date them. Like the fuck out of here, dude. You full of shit. excuse my excuse my language, ladies. Cass says I need to go out to some more social events. Can't be stuffed putting myself out there though. My inner peace is really important to me. Um, yeah, I hear that. I can't speak for Australia, but the thing is, here in America, most guys aren't going out to events anymore. That's another complaint. Women are saying, well, these guys aren't like we go to these events and these guys aren't there. I mean, again, because of the Me Too movement, women were literally telling guys on social media to be approached. So a lot of guys stopped approaching. They found that guys are gonna are gonna always assess their options. And if a bunch of women are online, you know, clowning men and telling them don't approach them because they consider them creeps, and then if they do, they're gonna call them out for it. These guys are gonna approach. They're not gonna risk being embarrassed. Um, you know, no. Then on top of that, a lot of guys felt like, look, with the rising cost of stuff, I'm not gonna waste my money going to social events to see a bunch of women who are gonna just pretty much shut me down anyway. Like I can spend my money on not me. I'm not me per se. That's not how I get down. But a lot of these guys were like, why should I go to these social events and go to nightclubs where I just get shut down because all the women are looking for the high rollers. I know it's an old school term, but you know, before we talked about ballers and all this, high rollers, like they're looking for high rollers, right? They want the guys who are super attractive and look like they have money. So if they didn't fit that, then the guys were just, it was a waste of time and money for them to go to these events. So a lot of guys aren't out at these events. But again, I can't speak for Australia, Cat, but here in the U.S., a lot of guys just aren't going to events. Most Nowadays, if a woman wants to find a guy, he's not going to go to these little outings, these social outings. Most guys, the best place women can find men at are at the gym. That's where you're gonna find the that's where they're gonna find the guys who are attractive and probably have money, because if they have time on their hands, they probably means they have money as well, so they can go take care of their fitness. So a lot of these so the the fitness gyms have become the new nightclub. Not, and I said this 2 years ago. I was like the gyms have become the new nightclub. The only problem with that is that you got a lot of women coming into the gym thirst trapping, but then making themselves unapproachable. Now, at the gyms I've frequented, the women aren't like that. They've actually been very nice and approachable, but that might be my own bias because I'm not considered ugly, at least not by most women. I'm not claiming I'm beautiful or anything. Like I'm this handsome. I'm that. I'm not claiming I'm that dude. I'm not claiming that, but for the most part, I've found women approachable at the gym. Even though I don't really approach, I'll just say hi or whatever. Asking them, hey, are you still using that? Blah 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 blah. Just making a small talk sometimes. But I don't get shut down like some of these guys do. Like they complain about approachability at the gym. But again, probably helps if you are actually attractive. You come to the gym looking like uh, Fred Flintstone, it might then you might get shut down. But if you come there looking you know like T'Chaka, you might be seen as more approachable. I don't know. Cass says I went to one a few weeks ago. Mostly older women. Ratio would have been 2 to 1. Oh, 3 to 1. Okay. Yeah, like I said, most social events. Like I said, I can't speak for Australia, but in the U.S., most social events are going to be mostly women. Guys aren't going. First of all, guys aren't interested in the type of things the women like to do. We don't want to go to brunch. We don't. We're not going to these little wine tasting events or charity events. Like most guys who work hard for their money aren't going to charity events where they can give it away. Now, yeah, there might be some wealthy men out there at some of these charity events, but again, those same wealthy men are going to be wanted by the hundreds of other women at those events. So unless you know that you can compete with those other women at those social events, may not be worth it. I said, where are men? Men are at places where they find men have a lot of men are just now at places where they find themselves comfortable. They go into the gym, you know. I find guys at the gym, sports bars, uh, um, the nerdy guys like me. They go to places like the comic books stores and comic book conventions, um, that the little anime events, stuff like that. But most guys aren't doing the social events like they used to 30 years ago. That's kind of dead. That guys aren't, like I said, guys nowadays aren't putting themselves out there for women. Like a lot of them have, frankly, a lot of them have given up, which just goes into what's called MGTOW, men going their own way. I don't agree with that movement, the MGTOW movement, but there are a lot of men who are MGTOW, and the worst ones are the incels. And a lot of people use this term incel as a slur, but it actually is an online it actually is an online movement of guys who decided to they're not dealing with women anymore, not because they're gay, but they find the that they don't want to risk, putting themselves out there just to get embarrassed. So a lot of them have just given up, and so they fall into the incel crowd, the MGTOW crowd, which is separate from SYSBM, Save Yourself Black Men. These are men who are still pursuing women. They just decided to pursue women outside of the black community. That's what Save Yourself Black Men is about. Men who decided to pursue to pursue women outside of the black community, and often don't even want to be involved in the black community anymore because they find it degenerate. Um, Agnes says I met my fiance at a basketball game in Madison Square Garden. See, yeah, that's another a sporting event. That's another good place to meet men. I forgot to mention that. Just because I go to sporting events sometimes, but usually the places when I go to football and baseball games, uh, I usually don't see single women. But yes, for single women, that would be a great place to meet men. A lot of men will be at sporting events, baseball games, football games, basketball games. I I mean, we don't really have a basketball league here. Well, we have the Washington Wizards, but I don't care about them. I love going to baseball events because I love the Baltimore Orioles. So if I go to any sporting event, it'll be like a baseball game. I have gone to I have gone to a Ravens game. I've gone to the Redskins game in the past. Football's okay, but I like baseball better. It's something more. Uh, it's something more like there's something so wholesome about baseball. It's almost nerdy, which is what makes me love baseball because it's almost there's something even though it's sports, it's almost something nerdy about baseball. And my grandfather was in the Negro leagues um, when he was young. So he even told me he's like, hey, if you go into sports, he said you should go into baseball because it's easy. He says easier to get selected to go pro in baseball than it is in football or basketball. At the time, I had no interest in any pro sports, but I remembered him telling me that. Um, but yeah, sporting events, the gym, sports bars, or very nerdy things like Magic the Gathering card events, or uh, um, comic book conventions, um, stuff like that. Like anything that seems very something that you would associate with just men is where you're gonna find men at. Oh, the 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 gun range, plenty of guys at the gun range. Ladies, that might be a good way. Now you find a guy at the gun range, he can provide and protect. First of all, he can provide and protect because it costs money to go to the range. Like going to the shooting range costs money. And he's going to the range, which means he's learning how to be proficient with his firearms. So I mean, he can both provide and protect because he has to have money to be able to go to the shooting range, and he can protect because he's there training to learn to use his firearm. So that's another place the ladies can find suitable mates, shooting range. Um, Also, a lot of guys are into MMA and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and Muay Thai. So, whereas 30, 40 years ago, so, like 30, 40 years ago, you saw guys taking karate and kung fu. Now you'll see them taking MMA, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, Muay Thai. So, if you go to any MMA gym, there's going to be a bunch of men. Again, they're fit and they can provide and protect because, again, you need to have money to go to the gyms, and they can protect because they're literally learning how to fight. So MMA, like I said, gyms, shooting ranges, sports bars, sporting events, MMA studios. That's where you're gonna find men at. They're not going to brunch. They're not going to wine tastings. They're not going to charity events. Um, they're not going. They're not going to these. Uh, what do you call those dating events? What's the dating events when you date multiple people at once? The I'm talking about uh, I'm talking about the thing where Speed dating. Yeah, that's what I did. Speed dating once in college. Yeah, guys aren't doing that anymore. They're saying it's not worth it anymore. Like most guys don't find most. First of all, most of the guys don't find that sort of stuff. That sort of stuff fun because it's mostly geared towards women. What's up, Carlton? So yeah, most guys don't find that stuff interesting, and then even if they did, a lot of them don't want to risk going there and not getting anything out of it. So like guys know that if they're not considered conventionally attractive, so they know they're gonna get shut down. So if you want to meet guys where they are instead of where you will hope them to be, um, I wouldn't do those little foo social events. Again, I would go to the sporting bars, go to the games, to the sports games, the shooting range, the MMA schools, uh, stuff like that. Now, guys do go out to eat, but like I said, they're not going to be at brunch and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with brunch. I think I went once with a girl, but I was literally out on a date, so we went to brunch at this place. But most guys don't do brunch. Like guys don't meet up with their bros. Like, yo, bro, yo, yo, let's all go to brunch, son. Yeah, son, let's go get some brunch, son. I need some waffles with some etouffee. No, we don't know. We hungry. It's like, yo, let's go to let's go to Five Guys or something like that. So that's another place. So if you do want to find places where guys are eating, it's either sports bars or places that serve large large portions of meat. Pause. But yes, places where they serve large portions of meat, you're gonna see men at like Mission Barbecue. I don't know if Mission Barbecue exists outside of Maryland or in Virginia, but um, if you don't have a Mission Barbecue from wherever you're watching this, think of like any place that serves like pit beef and pit barbecue stuff like that. Carlton says Hooters. Yeah, Hooters definitely, but a lot of the Hooters are closing down. Who would have thought that it would have been unsustainable to run a Hooters where the women are no longer attractive? DEI doesn't work. They Hooters tried to be DEI because they got criticism for only hiring women with big titties because that's what men actually wanted to see and came there for. So they started hiring less attractive women, and Kel Surprise, the the restaurant is no, the restaurants have started to shutter. Give the men what they want, and you know, they'll like I said, it was. I know that's not the only reason Hooters is closing. I know there's some like financial issues involved, private equity and stuff like that. But it's not a coincidence that once they went DEI and started hiring less attractive women, that around the same time they stopped being a successful restaurant franchise. Like I said, I only went there once, and because my cousin, it was funny. My cousin took me. He's like, you ever been to Hooters? I was like, nah. He said, you never been? I was like, nah, man. He's like, damn. He said, where have you been? I was like, I don't know, man. I said, I've been wanting to go. I just never went. So he took me to Hooters in Virginia. You know, Virginia is a more of a conservative place, so they had more the type of women you would want to see at Hooters with the big titties and the pretty faces. And you know, there was one right up in my face. She was all smiling and looking exactly like how I expected Hooters to be. And they had plus I was down. I told him I was like, bro, I'm down for any place that has buffalo wings. So my cousin took me there. The chick was, and I ordered the most hot wings. And she was like, all right. My cousin was like, yeah, well, I'm gonna get the such and such. She started teasing my cousin. She was like, oh, you can't handle the hot wings like him. He's like, nah. He's like, I can't. He was trying to play it off. He was like, no, I can handle, it, but he's like, I just don't want that right now. But she was like, she's like, oh, you want the hottest wings? I was like, yeah, I do. She's like, all right. I tore them bad boys up. They, I don't know how they were so hot. They were not. Maybe they were hot for like a Virginia. Maybe they were hot for someone from Virginia, but they were not hot. Like they were good and they were spicy, but it was nothing that was going to send my mouth into orbit. Pause. But she had the Hooters. Now, the Hooters is still thriving overseas because you can find Hooters over in Thailand and Philippines and places like that where the women on point. Like I didn't go to Hooters when I was in Thailand, but we walked by it on Walking Street uh, in Pattaya. I guess is what do men need? Big bottom ladies. Some do. I'm oh damn, it's late. It's 1:35. Why no one tell me it was so late? I'm not a big bottom lady dude. Like I like a nice butt, but it has to be proportional. Like I like the hourglass figure. I like it proportional. I don't like the BBLs or the badunkadunks like they used to call them back in the day. It has to be proportional to the body. I like it to be like an hourglass figure. But to each his own. Some guys do like the huge BBL butts and all of that. To each his own. From what I've gathered from what other men have been saying to me, and I've heard them discuss online, most of them, some of them are attracted to the BBLs, but only for a fun time experience. If you get what I mean by fun time, but they're not attracted to them for relationship issues. Like they would just deal with them for a fun time experience, but they don't consider BBL type looking women the ones for wifey material. And some women are confused by that. They don't get that men have different categories of women. Like they have women that they will date or be in a relationship with. Um, and out of that categories, some of them they'll marry. And then there's a category of women they will just bang. And the mistake is women who are bangable think they're also wifeable, and they're not. Bangable and wifeable are not the same. Molin says, from another man's perspective, I've never had brunch. I don't want to hear about some bitch you hate at your job. I don't care about pesto or your gay friend who's only gay until you offer him some. Facts. What like I said, the only time I ever went to brunch is when this girl invited me. We were on a date, and she was someone I met from OK Cupid, by the way. She was an Asian woman. She was cute. She was a college professor. Um, I still don't remember what she taught. I think she, I think it was on her profile, but I never asked her. We went on two dates. We went to brunch once at this place, it's really good. Then we went to our Indian restaurant for our second date. We never got to the third date, which would have meant me bang 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 bang. Let me stop. But yeah, that was the only time I ever went to brunch was was on a date. So, uh, Mullen says, forget a nail salon, forget your friends from high school weddings, forget all that stuff. I'm not going. Agnes is natural behind LOL. Yeah, I like it natural, but even with it natural, still has to be proportional. I don't like huge bottoms. I'm not the usual black guy. A lot of black guys love the huge asses. I don't. I think if your ass hangs off the toilet, it's too big. That's just me. But yeah, if your ass is if more of your ass hangs off the toilet than is actually on the toilet, it's too big. Carlos says hit the gym, ladies. You don't need a BBL. Absolutely. The most attractive girls are when you see them in the gym because they're natural. That's their natural beauty. Like they might have a little glisten of sweat on them. Their hair is down. They don't like their hair isn't done. Except for the women who come there with the fucking bonnets on. To me that's like kryptonite. Like if I see a woman with like if I see a woman with a bonnet on outside of her house, I'm instantly unattracted. Even worse, I started seeing like ratchet white women, like wiggers. I know they don't use that term anymore, but I started seeing wiggers wearing bonnets. I saw some uh, Thai prostitutes wearing bonnets because they think it looks cute, and I'm like, no. But yeah. But aside from that, like I said, going to the gym, the women are looking natural. This is the best looking women look. This if women want to know what guys will find attractive, is how they look at the gym. Or like Kevin Samuels used to say, fresh face right out the shower. That's what we like. Not when you all caked up with the makeup, looking like you just spent $1,000 on crayons on Crayola. uh, Molly says some men just need affection and respect about boundaries. I He said I don't want to take y'all to go sneaker shopping or help me fix my car in the garage or come fishing on the lake. He said, lastly, too much makeup is gross. Take that war paint off. You put on yoga pants. We like that. True. So getting to the something Agatha said earlier, I wanted to get back to my third point of why guys are going overseas. Like I said, some are going to sow their oats. Some are going to find women for relationships, not just to sow their oats. Some are going for a better quality of life because you can find peace of mind overseas. Like you're no longer you're no longer considered like you're no longer living uh under the under a society that sees you as a criminal when you're overseas. So you it's much more it's much more peaceful for black men overseas because you have peace of mind. You're not treated as a criminal overseas. You're just treated as a foreigner. Now, being treated as a foreigner can be bad in some places, but it's not particularly about your skin color. It's just about you being a foreigner. But outside of being considered a foreigner, often you get a lot of love from the locals. If you give them respect, they will give it to you, and they would give it back to you multiply. Especially in places like the Philippines, which is every year rated one of the most friendly places in the world. Every year they're rated as one of the most friendly places on the earth. And it's some Filipinos say that's just because they have a colonial mindset. I don't think it's the colonialism because if there's been a lot of places that have been colonialized by the European conquest, particularly by Spanish conquistadors, but they didn't end up as amenable and friendly as the Philippines. That's just something that is part of their culture. So shout out to the Philippines. But one of the other main reasons black guys are either leaving the black community, Save Yourself Black Men, SYSBM, or they're becoming passport bros, is because of black fatigue. This concept has gone viral in the last few weeks. The term black fatigue. It is a new term for an old phenomenon. Chris Rock literally talked about this back in 1996. Sorry, I need to take a water break, guys. I'm losing my voice and I'm dehydrated. And I got my hoochie daddy shorts on. I actually do have my hoochie daddy shorts on, but it's hot. But yeah, um, but the other reason, like I said, it hasn't been addressed as much, but it will be more so. I think a lot of the reasons guys are traveling overseas, not just for love, not just for plentiful sex, and not just for better, and not just for the travel for the travel experiences, but also because of black fatigue. And black fatigue is covers two sorts of things. I'm gonna address both. There's the black fatigue right now, politically, as far as black people are tired of the political scene. They don't want to be. They no longer want to be out there, you know, marching for every social cause out there. Like tired of it. Like a lot of them were mad at the outcomes of the presidential election last year, and so they just said, "Hey, I give up. I don't care anymore." And a lot of them were mad that these immigrants who voted for Trump are now getting kicked out the country and saying, "Hey, black people, why aren't you defending us?" They're like, "What you talking about? We voted for Kamala. I didn't. I voted for Trump." But a lot of those black folks, they voted for Kamala, and the very immigrants asking them to save them, the majority of their, the majority of voters within their population voted for Trump. So black people are like, man, screw you. We're not dealing with y'all anymore. He's like, we warned you guys decades ago about this sort of stuff, but y'all thought y'all was better than us. Y'all kept saying, oh, we're just lazy. You need to uh, pick yourself up by your bootstraps instead of complaining about racism. So black people are just like, all right, fuck y'all. So that's one version of black fatigue. But the version of black fatigue I want to address is actually the fatigue black people have with other black people within the community. Just as with the phenomenon known for like decades, known as white flight, that when several black families move into a predominantly white community, a lot of white people move away. And when they do, the property values drop because a lot of these people take their businesses with them. And, you know, so there's white flight, but what black people have not often addressed, at least outside of talks amongst black people. So I'm like, y'all in some stuff right here for all the non-black people here. There's also black flight. So we all know, most of us have heard of white flight. The fact that a lot of white people move out of the community when a lot of black and brown people move into the neighborhood. But here's the thing: there's black flight as well. Black people move out of black communities when they become more upwardly mobile to get away from the low value black people in those neighborhoods. This has happened in Baltimore. Here, the current population in Baltimore is like I'm gonna say around 600,000 or so, which is big for a city in America, um, but still smaller than some of the other bigger cities here in America. Like, for instance, like New York City is like 8.3 million people, right? At Baltimore's height, it was at a million people. But here's the thing: as more black people in Baltimore, which has been known mostly as a blue collar city, as more of them became more upwardly mobile, speaking, I'm speaking in terms of social economics, as more of them became upwardly mobile, they moved out and away from Baltimore. They moved to the DC area. They moved to the outer suburbs of the greater Baltimore area. And that's why it's only 600,000 people in the city, because most of the people most of the people who got an education or became well to do left, not to return. Now there's a thriving part of the Baltimore community that's mostly in southeast Baltimore. There's a little area of South Baltimore. There's an area in South Baltimore which is sort of like the heart of the city now. But outside of that region, because and it's a thriving area, it's where the Bush's one of Bush's daughters moved when she got married. She moved to South Baltimore because it was an up and coming neighborhood that was becoming gentrified. And then black people get mad when a community gets gentrified. So you're getting mad that an area is improving just because you don't like the fact that it's improving through people who can afford it, who aren't often black, and but they're raising the property value of these neighborhoods. And then, like I said, it's just the degeneracy in the black community. So there's a lot of black fatigue. So some guys are just like, yo, I'm down with the black community. And hey, I have a passport. So I'm going to go overseas and try my hand there. And I don't have to live amongst black people anymore. And the black people I do find overseas are of a different caliber, like myself, with whom I can get along. Like when I'm overseas, I occasionally meet up with black people, but they're of similar mindset to me, where they're not about the they don't care about, they're not all caught up in American politics. They don't care about hood shit. Um, they just trying to live their life, you know, bang chicks, have fun, live life. Like I remember coming from my wedding in the Philippines back 8 years, almost 8 years ago now, and I'm in a remote part of the Philippines. Well, not remote, but I'm on a random freeway in the Philippines, nowhere, not like hours away from Manila, and I just happened to run into this store, get some coffee and stuff like that, and I'm still in my tux, and it was just a random black dude there. He saw me in a tux. He's like, "Hey man, congratulations." I was like, "Thank you." So it's the dopest thing is meeting up with other brothers overseas, because they got their mind right. Usually more times than not, nine out of 10, they got their mind right. Now if you're in Latin America, no, it's a lot of passport pookies there, and I've addressed that in previous videos, so I'm not going to go there today. But for the most part, when you meet other brothers overseas, they got their mind right, so you feel more comfortable like being friendly towards them. Carlin says, just be careful having cannabis on you, because some countries don't play about that Jared Shaw, black man from Dallas, may be getting unalived in Indonesia for breaking the law. That's his fault. I mean, I don't want the guy to get unalived, but you're in Indonesia. Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world. Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world by population. You know not to use drugs in a Muslim country. That's stupid of him. Um, I don't smoke weed. Haven't done that since college. Um, I find it immature. Um, yeah, I wouldn't do that. You don't have to worry about me. I don't do anything stupid overseas. If I don't do it here, I'm definitely not doing it overseas. But yeah, but but point noted, guys. When you go overseas, ladies too, don't do anything over there that's illegal, and don't do anything over there you wouldn't do here. That's just a good rule of thumb. Don't do anything overseas that you won't do there. But also know the local customs and laws. It only takes a cursory Google search to know a little bit about the country you travel into before you go there, so you don't get caught up. Like there's some places like I think it's in Singapore. You don't spit on the streets. In Thailand, you don't walk over. You don't step on currency because the currency has the face of the king of Thailand on it. It's considered huge disrespect to walk on the on one of the Thai baht banknotes because all Thai currency has the picture of the king on it. So or to deface or um, step on currency there is tantamount to insulting the royal the royal throne. So there's so many things to know, but like I said, just know it takes 10 minutes to do a cursory glance of the local customs to whatever country you're traveling to. But obviously, don't smoke weed in another country. It's the like that's some of the stuff I'm talking about. This is why people go overseas to get away from guys like this. Like if weed is that important to you, just stay in America because drug use is not tolerated overseas. Drug trafficking in Singapore is a death penalty, and it's not the only place. But Singapore, and in some other places, drug trafficking carries the death penalty. Drug use is frowned upon as well, where you might be locked up for a long time. Carson says, I'm having YN fatigue. I'm tired of those guys making the black neighborhoods dangerous. Yeah, I mean, people keep talking about the YN thing. It's just a new term for the Pookies and Ray Rays. It's nothing new. When we were younger, our generation was just as bad, if not worse. Um, I think it's a little bit worse now because most of these guys have grown up in communities where there are no where there most of these guys have grown up in fatherless communities. As bad as the hood was back in the 80s and 90s, there were still fathers around. There was still some because they were more and most of those fathers were stepfathers. It is what it is, right? But there look, the hood wasn't completely devoid of fathers but today it's more these communities are more fatherless than I think they were back in the 80s and 90s and 70s. And as a result, these guys have no reference point for how to how to behave as men other than other people of their own stature and hip hop. Uh, they don't even show proper respect to older men anymore, which is why I often don't like dealing with Gen Z kids because they often don't know how to talk to young old. They don't know how to talk to older men. Like rarely do I hear a yes or no sir or Mister Such and Such. Like they don't know how to talk to like they don't know how to talk to older men. Um, I'll even hear like the most deference you'll hear them the most deference you'll hear from a younger guy to an older guy nowadays is Unc or OG. I'm no one's OG, and the only one whose uncle I am is of my nieces and nephews. Now they said, hey, now if it was like the old school where people used to say uncle and auntie to to the older generation like they do in Indian and Asian communities. In Indian and Asian communities, they refer to all elders as uncles and aunties. In my Filipino community, you know, they often call me kuya, which is like big brother, which is like a term of deference to an older man. Um, and if you're within the family, sometimes they'll even call you tito, or uncle, or for a woman, tita. Um, but outside of like in in African communities, they still do it. I still hear them calling each other uncle and auntie, but the black community stopped doing that. Like in the South, they used to do that. They used to refer to the older folks as uncles and aunties in the South in the past. No one does that anymore, I don't believe. Honestly, I never remembered this song, Shades Tell Me I'll Be Around, back in the day. Unless this is new. I don't know how old this is. It looks like it's from the early 2000s. Someone can tell me. Shades Tell Me I'll Be Around. How old is that? Anyway, but yeah, the YN fatigue is like fits into, like I said, black fatigue, and this is one of the reasons guys are traveling. This is why the SYSBM movement hasn't stopped doing what it's doing. A lot of brothers are leaving the community. They don't want to deal with black women. They don't want to deal with their degenerate children. They don't want to deal with a community that doesn't put men first. Like you can't expect these men to provide and protect the community, and you don't you don't position them in a you don't position them in a place of respect. Instead, they put the matriarch as the instead they put the matriarch as the highest point in the black community. Like they've raised the level of the matriarch to uh but the thing is the problem with that is like the matriarch isn't the progenitor of in any community. So when you turn the black community into a matriarchal society, it pushed away black men. Same thing with the black church. The black church has done that. How a lot of you, a lot of you brothers are religious, but how many of you still actively go to church every Sunday? Most black men don't. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. warned about this literally over 60 years ago, saying that the black church runs the risk of becoming irrelevant to black men. He predicted that over 60 years ago. And not because black men are becoming less religious, but because it's becoming less relevant to the needs and concerns of black men. It seems often this congregation are full of a bunch of women, and the only black guys there um, are usually the pastor and the deacon, and it's basically like their little flock. Carson says now the racist white supremacist Trump may have to save the guy from his own demise. He said these new cats are more dangerous, bro. He said they don't fight; they go straight to a firearm. Uh, I mean, like depends on where you at. Like I lived in, I lived in Baltimore and Philly when I was a teenager. So didn't most guys back then didn't have hands either. They just straight up shot you. So to me, that's not a new phenomenon because, like I said, growing up in the '90s in Philly and Baltimore, most of them would shoot first, ask questions later. Like I was at a party and a guy who we weren't like friends, but we were cool. We were cool in school. Like he was aiming a gun at me because someone hit him. He took out his gun and started just aiming it recklessly, trying to find who hit him. He was about to unload on somebody. I'm at I'm at the Baltimore Harbor. Something breaks out and shots just rang out, and we literally hit we literally hit the ground because like shots went above our head. Like I don't know if I was standing up, I might have got hit. Um, I was walking back home one day, I think from the store or something, And one of my homeboys didn't know who I was. He was about to rob me till he recognized who I was. He's like, "Yo," and I was like, "What's up?" He said, "Oh," he's like, "Oh, what's up, man? What's going on?" His whole demeanor changed. He's like, "What's going on, man?" I was like, "No, I'm chilling, on my way back home." He said, "All right, I got you." He says, "That's what's up." He said, "I holler at you." Yo, his whole demeanor completely switched up. He was fully in stick up mode until he recognized who I was. So it was luckily that I knew everyone. You know, I knew mostly everyone in my community. Being affable has been one of my superpowers, and I think I've been easy to make friends just because I move so much. But yeah, like I said, I do think the YNs today lack more respect for older men than they did in the past. And like I said, I'm not saying that people in our generation still were like highly degenerate, like they would bust on someone old or young. But I think the difference is because there was more of a presence of fathers or stepfathers in the community back then, they had some deference to older men. But nowadays, I just don't see any deference. Like they talk to older men like they talking to one of their friends. Like, "What's up, bro?" Like, don't call me bro. Like if someone, some teenager calls me bro, I'm just gonna ignore him. And I stay in shape just in case I have to bust one in the face. Pause. Punch someone in the face. Our Carlos says now the kids refer to us as old niggas. I mean, at least we got to live to be old. A lot of our friends didn't. And when they talk that shit, I'd be like, understand, us Gen X who survived, who you consider old niggas, we're the strong ones. The weak, I said the weak died out. I was like, it's less Gen X than other generations because we weeded out the weak early on. So the ones still around were the tough ones. Don't want to mess with us. They don't know. They don't realize that today be trying to clap. They try to fry us online, and then they get their feelings hurt when they realize like we have no filter. Like people always get surprised on my live streams and on my video, like in my comment sections. Sometimes I fire at the wrong person. Like I apologized recently to someone earlier yesterday because I completely misconstrued his comments. Um, And so yeah, I was man enough to apologize. Say, hey man, that's my bad. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I'm thinking you was saying something completely different. Um, but yeah, like a lot of younger folks will come in and try to fry us online just to be surprised that Gen X men have no filter. Gen X women as well. Like we have no filter. So, and a lot of us, because we're older, probably aren't trying to throw hands anymore. We'll just bust shots too. I don't think it's a good idea, but a lot of us will. How is it just me, but are black women just off the hook anymore? Uh, you mean like, what you mean they're off the hook? You mean they aren't? Well, I don't. You mean they aren't hitting anymore? Like, is it like attractively, or you mean like just their social is like the way they behave is messed up? I would tend to agree with both. Carmen says, "Wow." He said, "I remember when I was young, if me and my friends were cursing and an old elder walked by, we would stop until they were out of earshot." Yeah, we would kind of do the same thing, but again, my friends and I, we had more respect. But the hood dudes, like my friends weren't really the hood dudes, so we would cuss and drink and all that sort of stuff. But we wouldn't do that around elders. Nowadays, they don't care. But yeah, the hood dudes, they didn't care either. Like I said, like I said, living in places like Philly and New York, I mean, sorry, like Philly and Baltimore. I've been in New York. I've not well. I've had a lot of New York friends. um, like I said, most of my friends we have respect because most of us had fathers in our lives, whether they were stepfathers or whatever, or just male mentors. But a lot of those guys on the streets, they were just like the Wyans today, if not worse. I think the in in some sense they were worse when I was younger, just because the '90s was a more violent time than today. But in another sense, it's worse today, just because I think there's a lack of deference that some of us still had back then. Like even at my age, down in my late '90s, sorry, my late '40s, I still have deference for older men, just because I'm used to that. Like so, even to like men older than me, like in their '50s and their '60s, I'm going to show them, you know, respect. But like I said, the guys today, I don't. I'm not gonna say all of them don't. I think the ones who have been raised by fathers still have that respect, but the majority of them don't have fathers in their lives. So not only don't they have fathers in their lives, they come from fatherless communities. Like I said, as bad as the hood was back in the day, many of us could point to at least someone in the community who had a dad, right? If even if we didn't, I did, but I didn't live in the I didn't live in the hood except for when I was in Philly, and even then that don't count because I was still with my stepfather. But yeah, a lot of those people there in West Philly did not have did not have fathers. How it says batshit crazy. That's funny because there's actually one of my loyal followers on here. His YouTube username is batshit crazy. He just hasn't been on here for a while. Carlton says in the '90s, I remember people getting beat downs over starter jackets. Yeah, they were robbing people over starter jackets back in the day. Rob you for your starter jackets, your Jordans. Don't have the starter jacket with the matching fitted hat. They taking all that. He said in the Trapper Keeper notebooks. I don't remember anyone stealing anyone's Trapper Keeper. I don't know where you live, but from my way, no one was stealing anyone's Trapper Keepers. Um, it was made a comeback like 10 years ago. There was like this little whole retro thing where the Trapper Keeper became kind of in vogue again. I'm about to buy one. I have it on my wish list on eBay. I'm gonna get a Trapper Keeper. But I'm about to wrap this up, guys. It's getting late. Uh, but I just want to recap before I go. Um, for the people who might be just coming into the chat, weren't here from the beginning, or for the people who are gonna watch this broadcast on replay. Carlton says where I'm from, people were stealing the Mercedes Benz emblems from people's cars. Oh, I remember that as well. I remember. Yeah. Howard says I used to be able to walk with black women. Now and I avoid it. They just seem mad all the time. Yeah, man. Like I said, that's one of the reasons people are also traveling overseas is black fatigue. And like I said, everyone. So to recap what I was saying earlier, this was all in defense of the passport bro movement because they've been taking up a lot of beating online recently, especially with that little hit piece that came out under this news documentary a few months ago. And it was BS because most of those dudes weren't even passport bros. They were just a bunch of sex pats and they were white. Like most passport bros are still black because it started within the black. It started within the black manosphere. It was trademarked and coined by Aaron Ferris and some other people who were involved in the beginnings of the passport bro movement. And like I said, there's two origins. There's the proximal origins, which is like I said, started about 5 years ago within the Black Manosphere space by a bunch of brothers who were, um, you know, within the Black travel movement, I guess you can call it. Um, People like Aaron Ferris and others. Shout out to him again. Shout out to Richie Mack from Zoom to Thailand. Shout out to the Jamaican brother from Black Experience in Japan. I can't remember his name. Uh, but the that was the proximal origins. The distal origins is from the World War II era Black veterans who found love overseas, dated overseas while they were stationed in Europe and the Pacific Rim. Many of them came back to these places after their service ended, where some of them ended up dating and marrying these women and bringing them back to the states. That was that was the distal origin of the passport bro movement. Like I said, the passport bro isn't just all about being sex pats, but for the guys who do go out there just for pay for play, as some women claim or some men claim, it's nothing wrong with it as long as they're doing it consensually because people do it here all the time and they just get less out of it and pay more for it. So at least these guys are making more, are using their money more wisely overseas than they are here. And on top of that, some of these pay for let's I'm gonna be perfectly frank, some of the pay for play women overseas are nicer to to the men here than they are here. Like women only here in America, like the fucking sex workers here think they have a higher social status than the Johns. Or not just the Johns, they think they some of these women because they've been able to make a lot of money as sex workers through OnlyFans or other stuff like that, they think they are of a higher status than men who work a 9 to 5 with their hands. Like, no, you're not. You're literally a whore in the biblical sense. We're family friendly over here. Family friendly. They're whores in the biblical sense. um, uh, then you say, oh, these guys. Then you have the guys who are envious of them, or they are mad because they are relationship coaches or make their money as pickup artists mad that they're losing money by these guys going overseas. So then they say, oh, well, these guys are just losers. They couldn't get any without going overseas because they're socially awkward, they're nerdy, they're unattractive, they're blah, blah, blah. Okay, so if they are, that means they're being smart because they're going where they're celebrated, not tolerated because they realize, hey, I got better options over here at, at point A than staying here at point B and not getting anything out of it. So that's just smart to go somewhere where you get better, where you have better options. Like how people think that's a bad thing is absurd. And then the other claim was that like they just go over there to take advantage of women. That's just not true. Most of these women are find reciprocal. It's a reciprocal relationships with these women. These guys pride these men for being in a place where these men can take care of them, and they often find American men, particularly Black American men, to be more caring and affectionate than their local men. American men generally are considered more affectionate than men from other countries, particularly Black men. Like a lot of, and then like I said, and I can even break it down regionally. Like Europe, like I said, Europe is a Black man's playground. Asia is the white man's playground. Latin America is sort of like a mixture. Africa, to be determined. um, then, like I said, um, Then there were some women claiming these guys are traveling because they're broke. That's just patently false because you can't travel internationally unless you have money. So that just doesn't make sense. You may not be rich, but being rich doesn't mean you don't have to be rich to travel. But you just have to have disposable income. Uh, and like I said, so the actual reasons men travel, yes, some go for pay for play experience. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as they know what they're getting into. Others go for love. That's what I travel for. Others travel just for like higher quality experiences in their life. Traveling broadens your horizons mentally. And lastly, which I just addressed, a lot of black men are traveling because they have black fatigue. They're tired of the black community. They're tired of they're tired of American politics. So that's what they're doing. Um, and I can get into this more in another video or another live, but I'm gonna end it here, guys. Thanks, Howard. He says, "All right, now I always enjoy um, chopping it up with you. Have a good night." Sorry, guys. I'm out. Thank you again to everyone. Um, I'm gonna finish drinking some water. My throat's parched. Pause. And that's gonna be it for me tonight. Did not mean to stay up this late. Um, did I eat? Yes, I did. Okay, good. So yeah, so that's it. But I mean, if people got specific questions or criticisms about Passport Bros, like I said, I don't defend all of them. The Pookies, I do not defend. I will not defend them. Now, I've talking about them quite often. So this time, I just wanted to go the opposite way and defend them because it's been so easy beating up on them in the past 2 years that I wanted to kind of balance the scales again. But that's it. And like I said, a lot of guys that hate on them are envious because they can't do it, or they're mad because these guys are taking money out of their pocket because they have made a social media presence where they thrive on being relationship coaches and pick up artists and stuff like that. The women hate on them because they're finding that these guys are finding other options outside of them, and now they can no longer use these men to be their cleanup crew anymore. So that's it. That's all. I'm out, guys. Have a good one. Thank you. Appreciate it.